Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors coming to you with Life Talk Topics. This is part of my Life Rebound and Recovery series. Life Talk Topics are usually helpful for anyone who has been in a setback and is on their way to overcoming a setback. The topic will help you to gauge where you are in your understanding, as well as help you to plan your way out of setback, which involves um, you understanding your own contribution and the contribution of others. So take some time to listen to this Life Talk topic. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment and I will respond. In addition, I usually leave some sort of link in the description box. Also, subscribe to the channel as well as hit the notification button if you are interested in further topics. Thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I hope you are able to gain some insight from this Life Talk topic. All right, toxic relationships. So who you choose to be with in your life has its risks. You know, this is important because toxic relationships are not just romantic relationships. They can be friendships, they can be family relationships, they can be workplace type of relationships. And sometimes even if you are blood with someone, sometimes it still may not be beneficial for you to remain in close encounter with that person. But let's talk about romantic relationship, who you choose to be with. It became very toxic in my past relationship with my ex when I realized that his cheating was never going to stop, and that his cheating wasn't really a struggle, it was a lifestyle. As long as he was cheating and he said, I won't do it anymore, and I believed him, it wasn't toxic. Even though in many respects it is still toxic. I believe it's the knowledge that you come to, or the revelation that you come to, that this thing right here is not a struggle for him. It could be a person who is an alcoholic, a drug addict, a person who doesn't stay on jobs. You know, that person becomes toxic because here it is, you are working and trying to move forward, financially, and every time you turn around, there's an issue. There's an issue. That person can't stay on a job for longer than 6 months, right? So who you choose to be with. And once I realized that the person wasn't struggling, it was a lifestyle for the person, the whole environment became toxic after that. And it began to affect my sleep. It began to affect how I ate. It began to affect how I thought. It began to sort of contribute to the anxiety that I felt in a relationship. So the choice, no one took you by the neck or by the arm and chained you to be with them. In those types of relationships, that is criminal behavior. But we do choose who we are going to be with. And every time you stay in that relationship, you are making a choice by minute, by second, by minute, by hour, by day. And so when you think about toxic relationships, think about your choice. Why are you choosing this particular person to be in your life? I know people like to give this reason about feeling, desperate or pity or like you just need somebody. I don't buy that entirely. We may make choices simply because we are ready to settle down. With this last ex-partner, I was ready to settle down. I'm 44 years old, and I was interested in getting married, and so I was ready to settle down. The problem is I did not ask the right types of questions. The person was still struggling with an ex, and he was still involved in other types of activities, and I when I realized that he was still with the ex, I still made the choice to stay. And it affected me mentally and psychologically and financially. So, who you choose to be with in your life has its risks. Family relationships. So, how you set boundaries with family members has its risks as well. As long as you are a family member who does what you are told to do and do what you are expected to do, people will have the best relationship with you. They will not really complain. But as soon as you decide that you want to set boundaries with family members, for a number of reasons, it can be any reason. It can be, I don't want to spend hours on end with you on the phone. I have other things that I need to do. And spending so much time with you on the phone is really preventing me. I don't have time to give you money all the time, for gas. At what point are you going to begin to manage your money? You have a car, right? Every time I turn around, I have to, give you some money for rent. Okay, now there is an exception to the rule. When I was down, I had to move from San Diego in 2006. I moved back to Dallas, moved in with my mother, and then I got a job at the college I'm working at, and then I went to like another college, and then I lost my job in 2008, and it was around the time of the financial crisis. So I ended up having to sort of work through those issues with my mother and my siblings. But there were some times that they wanted me to do certain things, even though I was down, especially financially. They wanted me to do some things. And at that time, you say to yourself, well, look, I'm letting you stay here. You should be able to do this, right? Well, there are some things that you need to do to maintain your keep. You need to sweep and clean and mop and wash and things like that. Wash dishes, take out the trash. There's nothing wrong with that. But there were some things they wanted me to do that they could have done themselves. And you just pick any kind of example that you know from your previous experiences with people, especially your family, that there are some things that they could do themselves, but they are just sort of like punking you and say, why don't you do it, because you're down. And so throughout that process, even though I was down and I needed help, shelter, financial help and things like that, I still had to set boundaries. And I know that sounds strange because people think if you come and live with them, they just completely have their foot on your neck. But no, you have, even if you're down, there are still some things that you cannot do for your own sanity. So how you set boundaries with family members has its risks. We are now strained. Our family is, I am estranged from my family, and I would rather just keep it that way while I continue to heal. So the risks of not being a member of that family is one of the consequences of setting boundaries. Work relationships. So how you manage relationships with coworkers has its risks. Today I don't give my number out, and people look at me strangely about that, but I cannot have problems on my job. I was out of work between 2008 and 2013. I was freelancing. I had struggles. My resume, even though I had the 2 degrees, was still not competitive enough. And so I was in and out of homeless shelters, in and out of the family environment, things like that. And so I remember when I used to work at a company in San Diego, and it was a group of friends. We all did orientation together. And I just remember those experiences in my middle 20s, and how there was just always chaos and issues. And I didn't lose my job or anything like that, but I just, at 44 years old today, I say I cannot have problems with my job. I cannot have issues on my job, that I need the job, and for, obvious reasons, right, to stay and remain stable. But I also need the environment of teaching, because it's my gift, and you don't abandon your calling. And so, therefore, I don't give my number out. I don't hang out with people from the job. I will greet and have conversations with you on the job, but I leave you at the job. For one, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what kind of life you live. There was one person that I used to know from a previous job in Dallas. She and her husband were always having issues. They were both cheating on each other. And she justified her reason for also dating a married man. Now, I didn't judge her, but I understood that if I was ever in the car with her, then and the wife knew about her being a mistress to her husband, then I might get the brunt of the bullet shots. You know what I mean? That I might be the one who is hurt in the process, right? So I didn't hang out with her anymore. I'm glad that I had moved to San Diego by the time she got really good, hot and heavy in that relationship. And I loved her as a friend. And she was a co-worker at the time as well. But I just knew that if I was ever out and about with her, it would be me who got affected by the situation and not her, because remember, the drunk driver never gets killed. So how you manage relationships with coworkers has its risks, because you can let somebody take you home, right? And that's another thing that I don't do. You can let someone take you home, and they can have like marijuana in the car. They can have like a gun in the car. And anybody who's in the car today, the police officer is checking every ID, checking if you got warrants, checking everything. And what oftentimes people do when they sort of are cheaters in life, they will cut a deal with the police officer, with the DA, right? And then you end up going down for everything. So no, I cannot have problems on my job, because I'm training as a teacher. It is my calling. I need the job for financial reasons, and it is part of the vision planning. All right, friendships. So what you do with friends has its risks. When I left from Dallas to San Diego in 1996, I ran into the same types of struggles in the friendships I chose. Now, the people are not bad people. I wasn't a bad person, but I was sort of emotionally turned around. And come to find out, after everything that went down in those types of relationships, those types of friendships that I had, and they were toxic, I basically was choosing people who looked like my family, right? And we all ended up having a falling out. There were multiple relationships within the friendship, and we all sort of just had struggles with each other. And there were also some activities that they did that were not good for me. And so the risks for that was essentially basically saying, I'm not going to do that thing that you want me to do. Now, you don't have to go into any criminality reference. It can be simply, I don't want to hang out with you, or I don't want to go to the club with you, or it could be anything. And if you don't conform, especially in group dynamics, you tend to look like the outsider. And then they will automatically socially isolate you, and then you become the person on the other side of the room. So what you do with friends has its risks. how you engage, how you hang out with them. You always have at least one unproductive friend. And that one friend always tells you, oh, it's not that serious, man. Man, just be cool, man. Just be cool. But pay attention to that friend in 20, 30, 40 years. They don't have anything accomplished. They haven't done anything. They haven't accomplished anything. They haven't gone to school. And then you end up actually having to help them later in life. So if you don't stay on the course, stay on the road that you are going down, and you get off and do what they're doing, you're going to be what they are later in life. All right, dating relationships. So how you choose to navigate the sex market has its risks. In one of my audios that I have on my free course, Favors Learning Center, and it's not an audio, I'm sorry, it's a PowerPoint. And it is essentially, the title of it is Good Girls Don't Date. And the first question that I ask, or I present in that PowerPoint, is, are you available for sex? And that's a very important question, because I'm really kind of tired of people making the case that, oh, I didn't know he wanted sex for me. Okay, but you're dating. You're in the sex market. Why are you surprised that this person wants to have sex? Okay, so if you liken it to a car, people in the car, right? 2 or 3 people in the car, and they're all going in one direction, okay? And then if you get in the car, you are agreeing to the direction that they're going. So if you don't like the direction that they're going, then don't get in the car. I'm not saying that you should not have sex. I'm not going to say that. What I'm saying to you, you have to ask yourself the question, are you available for sex? Are you ready to do the types of things that are done on the sex market? There are 2 types of markets. There is the marriage market, and there is the sex market. And on the sex market, or in the sex market, people do whatever they want to do. They are into everything they want to do. They go back and forth, have rebound relationships, have all types of dating rotations, all types of things. Do you want to be part of that right now? And that's a question that you have to ask yourself, because it is like you getting in the car. All the people want to go this way and you don't want to go that way. Don't get in the car. So if I never dated, scratch this, probably maybe 1 or 2 times, but I never really believed in dating, because when you date, you run the risk of having multiple sex partners. And I didn't want to date people and have 10 partners a year. And I haven't even reached double digits in terms of my sexual relations, because I understood that early. Now, it doesn't mean that I chose well. I did not choose well, even in the partners that I chose, but I sort of just understood that much earlier in life. Okay, now there are some things I wish I really understood about how not to choose a snake, how not to move in a man, how not to take care of a man, how not to consistently stay with a man who's cheating on you. Now, those are the things I wish I had learned earlier, but I have learned them now, hence the Rebound Relationship series and all of the other series. But it is important, trying to get back to the point, that how you choose to navigate the sex market has its risks. So if you stay out of it, of course, you're not going to have sex. If sex is important for you, then you need to come to an understanding that people who are in the sex market are having sex. So you should not go to a man's house, and I know I'm going to get folks mad at me, but you should not go to a man's house thinking that we're just going to watch TV. That's not how the sex market works. So even if you were in the marriage market, You have a courting phase, and then there is an engagement, and then somewhere after the engagement, you kind of start having sex, leading up to the marriage. Okay, even then, unless you both agree that you are not going to have sex while you are engaged, okay, unless you do that. But overall, don't be surprised that people who are in the sex market are actually having sex. Okay, business partnership. So who you choose as a business partner has its risks. So, I don't necessarily believe in investors. While I'm building Confessions of a Rebound Girl, the school, the Patreon, the larger vision that I really won't let anybody in on just yet. Everything that you see now on my website and everything I'm doing with the courses, right? That's just a small puzzle piece. Those are just small puzzle pieces of a larger vision that I won't really let people in on just yet. But it is important that when you have investors, they get to tell you what to do. It's funny how you can publish a book with a publisher and you license that book, or you assign or transfer your copyright to that publisher. And then they pay you a royalty. And it's interesting that you can write 100% of the book, but only get 15 to 20% in royalties. And they get the remaining, right, through the publishing and distribution arms of their company. And something about that is just strange. I don't like that. I think you do have a lot of leeway when you say are like the president or CEO of your company, and then the chairman of the board, and then you may have like a public tradable company, right? And you have investors. Okay, that's different, because then you are the chairman of the board and you are the CEO of the company, right? Or just at least be the chairman of the board. But if you bring in investors too early into your enterprise, it's almost like they have their foot on your neck. You can't really run it, because then you have to get permission. I think you should do a lot of the hard laboring work by yourself first. Solidify your place in the marketplace, build up the numbers, build up a reputation, and then it'll make it harder for them, those potential investors, to come in and try to take your product. Another thing, you have to be careful about who you partner with, because if you are a vision-minded person who wants to leave a legacy, then you don't need to hook up with someone who just wants money, who just want to be rich, because then they will sell their portion of the business to somebody else, and then you have to turn around and deal with another partner. And you want to keep the business 100% under your control. Later, when it gets to a place where it's so functional and scalable, and you want to bring in investors, you can run the show. You can determine how much they can invest, right? Because you got the numbers, you got the data, you got the revenue. And so if you want them to only invest 10 million for 10% or something like that, you can run the show. But other than that, it will be a lot difficult. A lot of times we choose a business partner basically to distribute the responsibility of running a business. But sometimes you may have to be your own salesperson, your own accountant, your own content developer, your own website builder. You may have to do all of that and be patient. Keep your job, right? Because your job is cash flow, right? And you get your company to where it needs to be in terms of the revenue projections. But when you choose a business partner, it has its risks. There are some people who are not workers. They like to give the money, but they are not workers. And they will make decisions on your behalf or without you even knowing it. And anyone who is a principal of a business can bind the business contractually. And if you don't want to be hooked up with someone else, I would really take some time to think about who you choose as a business partner. All right, religious relationships where you choose to worship has its risks. I will confess I am a Christian, so I will support Christian ideals. But not everyone is a Christian or believes, that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and I understand that. But it is important where you worship for a number of reasons, especially one of those reasons, if you look at yourself, if you take an internal inventory of yourself, have you changed as a result of being part of that church membership? Right? Or, institutional membership. That I always have this saying that if you are exposed to me, by the time you leave my presence, and however long that is, it can be a quick conversation, you can be my student in my classroom. By the time you leave leave my presence, you should look and sing and sound different than when I first met you. That I should not be in relationship with someone and we're still thinking the same way. That we have not gained in any sort of understanding or wisdom or direction or insight, that they think exactly the same way I think and I think exactly the same way they think. Okay, something is wrong there. So where you choose to worship, is there growth? Are there classes? Most of the mega churches, which I do support, they tend to have like classes you can pay for like $1. Some classes are free, and they're financial classes, how to manage your finances. If you want to, grow in reading the Bible, they have Bible classes that from the time you became a Christian or pursued a particular religious denomination, you should look a lot different from the time you pursued it in, say, like the 70s or something, or in your 20s, than you do now in your 30s or 40s. That you should not still think exactly the same way you thought 20, 30 years ago, right? So that's something that you want to consider in terms of where you actually worship. All right, so marriage relationships, who you choose to love, has its risks. So I talk about this in my Rebound Relationship series on YouTube, that when someone proposes an open marriage, they do so after you have married that person, right? But the open marriage objective is a counter argument to the core argument, to the present argument. The present argument is we are going to be married to death do us part. Only us, though. But when they come to you and say, I want to bring someone else into the bedroom, or I want to be able to have me a side chick or have a side dude or something like that, that's a counter argument. And people like Maya Angelou, she's always quoted that people show you who they are much early. And so that need to have a third person in the bedroom or a third person in a relationship was present much earlier in your relationship before you got married. So it's hard to say, well, I didn't know once we got married. No, that's not true. Because if he was the type of person, or if she was the type of person who put everybody else before you, that is a sign that they had open marriage intentions. Even if they don't say the phrase open marriage, It's the idea of placing someone else as a priority. I have an example, and I talk about it in my Rebound Relationship series, where there was this guy that I was interested in, and I thought he was interested in me. And when I went to visit him in another state, he was calling girls in front of me. And I had a problem with that, and I told him as much. Now, he still did it, but I, voiced my concern. And then we went to the church, and there was a girl that he was interested in, because but by that time he had told me basically we're just going to be friends. So there was a girl that he was interested in. Now, when I visited him, I was sitting in the front seat of the car. But when he took the girl and her family home, she got in the front seat, knowing that I was in relationship with them, in whatever relationship, or at least in town. And he didn't say anything. And what that got me to thinking was, and it's not until much later I came to that understanding, like really now, because I'm 44 years old now, that he had changed my position much earlier in our relationship / friendship / I don't know what we are. And so once he called another girl in front of me, my position changed. He changed my position. I was no longer whatever it was that he thought I could be, or whatever it was I thought that I could be. I was no longer that. So when someone decides to cheat on you, or to entertain open marriage, or entertain anybody coming into the bedroom, they are changing your position. That you are no longer the wife. I don't care if you are called that in terms, in legal terms, you are really no longer the wife anymore. You have changed positions. Right before marriage, I talk about this as well in the Rebound Relationship series, that if you have a partner who says to you, let's wait and see, after the engagement, let's wait and see, or let's just wait and see, they are giving you a counter argument. Basically, they are not going to marry you. Now, they will keep you in the relationship, and they'll stay in a relationship with you, but they are not going to actually marry you, because the person that they really want is just not coming around. And they are waiting until that person comes around, so therefore they will sort of work on that person, groom that person for reconciliation. But they will keep you for maybe like a number of reasons, for companionship, for sex, for finances, until the person that they really want comes around. So then you have changed positions. Once they say, let's wait and see, you are no longer at the priority level. You are an option. So who you choose to love has its risks. If you stay in that car after they say, let's wait and see, you are choosing to be second, or you are choosing not to be no longer a priority. If you let that third person come into the bedroom, you have given up your right as a wife, or as a priority. All right, school relationships. What you do in school has its risks. So I teach a lot of times in my English classroom. Wherever I have failed, I tend to teach. So, and I'll use composition strategies to help students understand that, use the strategies as well as readings and, different types of topics. One of my topics is lack of transition planning. And you will see that as a running theme in everything I teach, everything I write about. That when I first left high school, I had 2 years of planning, and I teach students this, that in your junior and senior year, that is your 2 years of planning. So then when you come to the community college setting where I teach, you're not here just to take your basics. You are actually here for 2 years of planning, because you need to plan for your transition from one place to the next. And that's why people oftentimes stay in setback. Also, what people do in school, such as cheating, for example, it is really a sign that you did not plan for your transition, that you thought that the strategies you used in one area where you did just enough, right, and you got a check mark and a gold star, that those strategies would work in, say, like college or university level. That if you cheated in high school, you think that cheating is going to work for you in college, when it's easily detectable if you cheat in college, because we have a whole system that looks at your paper, right, to see if there's a match to like another paper, right? So what you do in school has its risks. So if you are ever accused of cheating and you are suspended or expelled, that goes on your transcript. So then when you want to get a job and the job asks you about your transcripts, you have to turn them over, right? You see, with the current situation with the college scandal, the parents paying for their kids to get into to elite schools, you see what that is doing to these kids, right? First of all, it's showing these kids that we don't trust you enough to actually learn the material to get into the college yourself, right? So it's kind of like speaking weakness into the student. And then now they have lost all of their sponsorships and potential jobs. So even if the kids themselves, right, decide to go after like a job situation, okay, they're going to always be seen as a cheater, as a liar, as a person who will do whatever he or she can do to get in, to get something that is not really, something that they deserve, right? So what you do in school has its risks. If you come from a public school system where they teach you just enough, or they give you strategies for learning the material and just enough, you will find yourself sort of doing that, adopting that strategy throughout your life. I remember, and I talk about this in another series, I was in a Spanish class in high school, and the Spanish teacher, and I've had other teachers as well, but the Spanish teacher told us to get the books out of the locker, and then he told us to do like a chapter or something like that. And then instead of actually teaching the Spanish, like taking the chalk and writing on the chalkboard and explaining or whatever, he sat there right at the front of the class, and he told us to do the problems, right, and then to look at the back of the book for the answer. And ever since that class, I have always had problems with those types of teachers. It turned my stomach. Well, if you're sort of taught that way to handle learning, meaning that you're not actually learning anything, you're basically doing problems and looking at the back of the book, you will move that strategy into other areas of your life, right? So into finances, I struggle with finances. Into relationships, I struggle with relationships, things like that. And I didn't cheat, but I did have a situation where there was a girl who wanted to look on my paper. And then after that, we were caught. And then after that, I didn't have any problems in those areas again. But what you do in school has its risks, meaning that if you don't attend to your learning, that if you're not interested in learning, see, what the teacher was teaching us is that he wasn't interested in learning. And if you look at it like this, he was really suggesting to us that I don't think you can learn this, so there's no need for me to teach you. And then you'll take that kind of attitude when you get older and you get into a position of authority that might require some mentoring or teaching, and you will adopt that strategy. So it's like I had to learn how to learn when I became an adult, because then I found myself taking certain strategies that were sort of projected onto me into like other areas. Now, I did have better teachers that taught me how to be more conscientious about learning. So then I began to adopt a conscientiousness later in life, not as soon as they taught it. And it isn't really until 44 years old where I truly understand the importance of it. So what you do in school has its risks. All right, so advocacy relationships, what you believe has its risks. One thing, lately we've been having a lot of teacher walkouts and strikes and things like that. And I have a problem with that. When you walk out of that classroom, you leave all of those kids abandoned. Now, I'm not saying you should not get paid for what you do. I understand that you need to get paid for what you do. However, you also chose teaching. You chose certain advocacy institutions and areas, right? And what you believe, I just don't believe in those types of strikes. I really don't believe in strikes at all, because I was out of work for so long, and so all these people who are striking and walking off the job and all that kind of good stuff, something about that is just not right. And during the earlier teaching strikes at the beginning of the year, it was during the time that Trump had shut down the government. So all those people were not getting paid for like 35 days, a month, and 5 days or so, right? And so now you have teachers striking and leaving jobs and still might get paid, whereas you got government workers who are shut down essentially, and they're not getting paid. Something is wrong with that. That's a strange phenomenon, that if you don't feel like you're getting paid enough, you might need to adopt a side hustle, or you just might need to leave altogether. So when you walk off the job, right, that's a belief system. That's an argument that you are putting forth. When you have sort of advocacy intentions like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Time's Up, any of these types of popular advocacy issues, they are all based in argument, that they are basically suggesting that we are necessary at this time, at this season, for this generation. Now, you have to check your belief system. Do you believe they are still necessary? And I have this new writing topic about protests and whether or not they are obsolete meaning unnecessary, necessary. Do you believe they are obsolete, right? And to extend the conversation, we added the word effective. So if you have a goal in mind, an objective in mind in terms of advocacy, you want to do X things, 1, 2, 3, right? If you are accomplishing 1 to 2 of those things, then you are effective. Protests are not obsolete. However, if you are not accomplishing anything and all you are out there doing is just walking and holding up signs and yelling and crying and all that kind of good stuff, protests are obsolete because you are not effective. So what you believe has its risks, because if you're going to commit time and body and mind, spirit, finances, it needs to be effective. You need to see a return on your investment in whatever you are doing, whether you start your own organization or whether you support an organization. So that means if you don't feel like an organization is effective, that they've been in business for 2 to 5 years and they haven't really made any true change, don't get in that car. It's going down the wrong road. You may have to start the organization yourself. So what you believe has its risks. So we've gone over all the different types of areas where the drunk driver never gets killed. So the person who is pulling you into something right before your time, or you could be the drunk driver positioning yourself into something before your time. So I'm going to leave you with a writing task. Journal the risks you have taken and the impact they have had on your life academically, professionally, and personally. What did you learn? And that's important, because if what you did returned a negative result, that means you took a risk that did not pan out, right? If you took on something that returned a positive result, it's still taking a risk, but you still have to assess whether or not your initial goal was accomplished. Because sometimes you can be in something and you go down the right, it could be a good road, but it might be before your time. You may be ill prepared. It's like trying to take on a job to become a supervisor, or say like a manager, and you haven't taken classes, right? Or you haven't supervised anyone. So some things can still be positive and some things can lead to some sort of effective outcome, but it still may not necessarily be for you to do in that moment, in that time in your life. So you still have to journal those types of risks, academically, professionally, and personally, because all of our activities tend to fall under these three categories. And so what did you learn from that experience? All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email, reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021. So I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch: Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters: Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.